like to start by saying welcome everybody to this month's live AcuGraph training webinar. We're excited about what we're going to talk about today because this is another one of the really cool new features that's available in AcuGraph 5 that was just a quantum leap ahead of what AcuGraph 4 had. Kimberly's here with us. Kimberly, say hi.
Hello, hello. We welcome you.
Looking forward to you're going to hear more from Kimberly today. The last couple of webinars has been a lot of me. Today it's going to be a lot of her. So we're excited about that. I was going to drag the computer out the door and over to Kimberly's office because she has this life-size skeleton that stands up, you know, in her office. And she was going to put it behind her during the video broadcast today, and she tried it, and it looked like it was sitting on her shoulder. I said, no, skeleton on shoulder is a bad idea. So she wheeled it outside her office, and it's actually guarding the door to her office, which, you know, that's a great image. Don't venture near while Kimberly's doing a webinar.
Screenshot on with your camera?
No, I was gonna drag the computer out there and show everybody, but I've got too many wires to unhook. So
maybe
we'll just
put a picture of Annie. That is her name, by the way. It's not just some random skeleton. Her name is Anorexia, and she's followed me around since college, and maybe we'll put a picture of her on the forum later today.
There you go. Okay, we'll put up the picture of the skeleton. So with that introduction, and during the pre-webinar chit-chat, I mentioned that Cameron, who often handles a lot of our technical stuff, is out of the office today. So technical glitches, we will officially pin on him. With that, welcome. Today we're going to cover a few things about how to handle notes in AcuGraph, and specifically how to use templates to really supercharge your note-taking and make things a lot better. Some of the things we talked about in the advertising, the best practices for note-taking before, during, and after treatment, how to use templates to cut down your wasted time and make things more efficient. So I want to start with just a quick general overview. Now, as you may know, AcuGraph 5, the note-taking is a major new feature, a big overhaul. I'm going to put up a poll here, and I'm going to ask people, I want to know how many of you are currently using your notes in AcuGraph. So over there on the side of the screen, you should see a little poll pop up. Go ahead and answer the question. Let us know how many of you are using the notes. While you're doing that, the other thing I'm going to mention is when you make comments over here on the side of the screen, anything that you type will be seen by everybody in the webinar. And there's two kinds of comments. One has a little question, or just a little bubble, like a sentence bubble, and that's a comment. But if you click on the little bubble when you're going to type your comment in, you can also select a little QA icon, and that's a question. And so you can choose if you're asking a question or making a comment. We're going to try to answer all the questions today. Meanwhile, we're seeing those poll results coming in. And it looks like we have kind of a smattering. Some of you are using notes with every patient. It's kind of equally split most of the time, sometimes. And then a third of you are saying, no, I do notes another way. And I understand maybe you have another EHR program you're using. Maybe some of you are still on paper notes. I should have put up another poll there. How many still use paper notes? I know some people still do. Well, with that in mind, the reason we added and enhanced note-taking with AcuGraph 5 is because it was the most requested feature we had. For a couple of years, we were polling, we were asking, what do you want to see in the new version of AcuGraph? And every time it was better notes, hands down. People wanted the ability to do that. Part of that, I think, is driven by the need for EHR in a lot of practices. Part of it, I think, is just driven by the fact that our lives are becoming more technology-centric. And therefore, if you're already using the technology for graphing, you want to be able to use it for notes as well. And frankly, it's a lot more convenient to have everything in one place, to not have to deal with paper files, and to have everything tied to the patient's graph so you can see all of the information about the patient in one spot. We started out with kind of reimagining things and says, okay, let's make notes really easy. Start with a blank piece of paper and type. Well, that's not that fun, but that's what we had for a long time. You could open it, you could type it, you could save it. Simple to use, but certainly not convenient. And the number one complaint, well, you can guess what the number one complaint was. That's a lot of typing for me to have to do to keep my notes in AcuGraph. And so when we set out to improve it, we started out with the idea that we want to be more effective. There are a number of different things we did. We have picture notes where you can actually put photographs. We have location notes where you can just pick a location on the body and make a note about that location. But today we're focusing on the typed notes and the templates. So with that, I want to talk about the top 3 reasons that you want to be using templates. And then we're going to get into how to do them. Here they are. I was thinking about this before. My top 3 reasons. Number 1, speed. How many of us use the same sort of outline in our note taking with every patient? I'm betting you do. And you were taught some sort of a format in school, or you've developed it over the years in practice, and you do the same thing every time. And so it's going to be a whole lot faster if you'll take the time to make yourself the templates. It's not hard. It's in fact super easy, it's super quick, and it will save you hours and hours in the future. Number 2, having a good note template makes you more thorough, because when the template's there, you've got the blanks to fill in, and you're not going to forget something, plain and simple. If you're having to type it free form every time, you never know what information you may forget, and you never know how that could come back to bite you. And then number 3, consistency. When you have a template to follow, then you have a consistent format every time. It makes it far easier to go back and find information because you know exactly where to look. Now, one little reminder that I want to put in before we talk about the how-tos of all this is simply that we need to keep in mind that our patient notes are legal records, that they could be subpoenaed by a court, asked for by an insurance company, requested by another practitioner. There's all sorts of scenarios wherein people might need access to your notes and legally would have the right to request them and to read them. Therefore, there's a few things you need to remember. Number 1, be taking good notes. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of lawsuits and malpractice and things like that, but you probably know that the number 1 defense you ever have, should you end up in an unfortunate situation, the only thing that protects you is your notes. Having good records of what you did, why you did it, the justification, what you found, all of that is how you protect your professionalism and your standard of care. And I guarantee those people who don't have a good set of notes, if they ever end up in an unfortunate situation like that, you've probably heard the horror stories. They end up in a lot of trouble. I'm turning my head because my dear wife just walked in. Come say hi. She didn't know she was going to say hi today, but hi everybody.
Hi.
This is my wife, Tasha. You're broadcasting live to a whole bunch of AcuGraph users out there. So
Great.
yeah. Thanks for stopping in today. We're doing notes. So I'll get back to it. Thanks, and see you a little later. Hey, that's always fun. Maybe next time the kids will stop in too. All right, so that's our legal disclaimer. Make sure you're keeping good notes. Bye, sweetie. And make sure that those notes are up to standard and are complete on the day that you actually have the patient encounter. Going back and trying to recreate notes after the fact, sometimes weeks or months later, is A, illegal, and B, gonna get you burned. So much for all the legal stuff. Now let's talk about how to take great notes and how to have good templates. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to share my screen here and start showing you some things. Let's go right over here. There we go. And you should be able to see my screen.
You're good. I can see your screen now.
Okay, thanks. I figured that's what the thumbs up meant. All right, so on my screen here, you see I've got my AcuGraph window. I'll make it just a little bit bigger. And as I'm scrolling through my fictitious patient, you can see I've got a variety of items here in the patient file. And then over on the left part of my screen, you can see I'm in the Notes tab here. This is where I want to take notes. And you can see I've got a couple of templates. Now, at the most basic level, What a template does is it takes some pre-formatted text and it takes it and drops it right here in the notes window where I would want to be making my notes. Now, before we get into how to use a template, I want to make sure that we all understand just basically how to do a note. So I'm just going to type one really quick here. We're going to say, I'm going to type a note about sleep. And for some reason, there we go. Okay. Just having problems switching between screens. So patient reports, didn't sleep well last night. Took 2 hours to fall asleep. And woke several times. Also, disturbing dreams. Okay, I just made a note. I could save that. When I click save, you can see over here on the right side, now I've got a note that's been placed in the patient file, and it's going to stay there in that record chronologically. I can always go back to it just by clicking. And as you probably know, you can do things like bold, or you can color these things, underline, format. You can do whatever you want in this notes section right over here to make the notes meaningful for you and easy to use. However, suppose sleep is something that I deal with a lot in my practice, and I don't want to have to type out a sleep note every time when I'm going to ask a patient about sleep. A far more intelligent and efficient thing to do is going to be make a template. So here's how to do that. I'm going to say add note. Actually, I'm not going to say add. I'm going to create a note template. But first, I'm going to clear out this. There we go. And so I click add note template. I'm going to title this template sleep information. And this is I'm going to create this as a template that I may use a lot in the future. And so in this sleep information then, I'm going to type, let's see, onset of sleep, time to onset, quality, duration, number of times awakened, and other. And if I save this as a template, and I'm going to put in the top here sleep information in the top of my template. I'm going to bold that, and I'm going to make it blue. And now I save that. And as you can see, now I have a template called sleep information up here. And anytime I'm taking a note and I want to put sleep information, I just click add to note, and it immediately appears here. And so then I can fill in the blanks about this. And when I save that, it appears over here in my scrolling patient file. Couple of points I want to make about what I just did. First point, you'll notice that I have sleep information and it's showing up here in blue. The reason I did that and the reason I included that in this template that I just created is so that when I'm scrolling through lots of patient file information and I see a note like that, it's going to be useful for me to immediately tell what kind of note it is. Maybe it's a chief complaint, or maybe it's an intake. Maybe it's a follow-up. Maybe it's, in this case, sleep information. So I did that to set it off. That way it's very easy for me to find. And I recommend you do that in your templates. So that is just the basics about how to create a template. Just to review, so it's click on Add Note Template, title it, create it in this window, and hit Save. And then you're done, and it'll be in this list. You can have many templates in this list over here, and you can use all of them. You can use multiple numbers of them. You can even use multiple numbers of them in the same note. For example, I can put in my new chief complaint. You can click add that to note. Am I having, it's like I'm having issues again with the broadcast. I apologize for that.
It's Cameron's fault.
Yeah, we'll blame Cameron today. I am just going to go home and then I'm going to get back in. Sometimes when we broadcast, it causes my mouse clicks to not register. So there we go. We've got Frodo up again. We're going to look at the patient file again. Huh. Oh, my new chief complaint. Oh, sorry. I see what was going on. My new chief complaint is blank. We're going to just delete that template. As you can see, the X deletes. So what I just did, I clicked on the SOAP note one, I clicked add to note, and you can see it put SOAP. And then on sleep information, I clicked add that to note, and it put that one in. So I just added 2 templates to the same note for the same day. And you can do that. You can have multiple templates in the same note, which really speeds your note taking because then it's modular. You can add them and build them a piece at a time. All right, we'll just clear that out. I've got one more trick to show you,
Real
and
quick,
then we're going to go back to Kimberly. Go ahead, Kimberly.
I was just thinking, sometimes I get people who ask me, how do I delete a note? This would be the perfect chance to share. So your first one where you were just talking about patient reports, didn't sleep well last night, you could just click that red X right there and delete it because you'd have the information in the templated note. So just so people know that they could delete a note if they did it wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for the reminder on that, Kimberly. Yes. So to delete a note from your patient file, your scrolling patient file over here, if you click on the red X, then you have the option to delete whatever's in there. It's gone. And if you click on anything else, it just takes you back to it. So if I click on this, it takes me back to this note here. Since this is a fictitious patient, I'll delete that as well. Obviously, you'll want to be very careful with that delete feature because when it's deleted, it's deleted. You're not getting it back. So you would only do that when you're certain you want to delete. Okay, I've got one more cool trick to show you, and then we're going to hop over to Kimberly, who's going to give us all of her clinical insights stuff. All right, and that trick is this. And by the way, I have to give credit to Kimberly for this trick that I'm about to show you because she's the one who discovered this, and I think it is way cool. When you're creating templates, as much as you might want to create the templates, and you can create the templates in this little window here, that's kind of hard to really see what you're getting. And so what Kimberly discovered is that you can actually create templates in a word processing program. So for example, I'm using right now Pages for Mac because I'm on a Mac, but you could be using Microsoft Word or OpenOffice or whatever it is you use for word processing, and you can create a note, make all the formatting that you want, and make it as large as you need so that you can see the things that are in the note. And then once you've got it all created the way you like it, it's really simple to just copy and paste it into AcuGraph. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to use this note right here called follow-up intake, okay? So I'm going to start by copying all the highlighting all the information in it, and then I'm going to hit copy, which you can do under your edit menu normally. And now that I've got that information copied into my clipboard, I just jump back over here to AcuGraph, add a new note, and I'm going to click right here where the text goes for the note, and I'm going to hit paste right here under the edit menu. And it just pasted all that in. You'll notice that it preserved a lot of my formatting. I've got my bullets, I've got my bolding, but I lost my color. And so I'm going to go back and recolor that. I noticed that, yeah, that one was blue. That one was red. There we go. So I've got all of the rest of it saved. And so you can make all the templates you want in Word or in your word processing program, copy them over, saves you a lot of time. One other thing to note, you do need to put a title up here at this part of the window. So I'm just going to copy follow-up intake. I'm going to paste it right there. And that way it'll show up in the list. It'll be called follow-up intake, but I'm also going to leave the title in the template itself so that when I use this template, it will show up in my notes. So I just saved it. And as you can see, there it is, follow-up intake. It's now in my templates list. And when I click add to note, there it goes. And if I were to, and so I can go through, I can type all the information into this note just by typing, got my tongue, my pulse, etc. When I'm done, I hit save. The note is now over here, and you'll see that follow-up intake, which I specified as blue, that showed up. And I talked earlier about why I do that, so that I can see what kind of a note each one is right at the top. Also note that there's a time and date stamp every time you create a note. And Kimberly is going to talk a little bit about the importance of making sure you pay attention to that. So just kind of to review then, we covered templates are going to make your life easier and more efficient. They're fast and simple to use. I mean, literally, it's one click to add a template. They're fast and simple to create, and you can create them in any word processing program. Now, while we're turning the time over to Kimberly, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put up our templates that we're going to give you. And you should see that displayed where you can click to download a zip file of the templates. And I want to show you what's going to happen, because last time we gave some templates out, we had some folks who didn't understand how to open them and needed some help. So let me give you a little bit of help. When you download the templates, you're going to get a zip file. It's going to look like this. If you can see on my screen here, I've got templates.zip. Wherever you download things with your browser, most of us have like a downloads folder. When you click or double click on templates.zip, then it will unzip to a folder called templates. And if you open that folder called templates, you'll see in here we have sample templates. We have them in 3 formats. We have them in a docx format, which is Microsoft Word. We have it in a Pages format, which is Pages for Macintosh. And then we have it in a PDF format, which you can open on anything. And from any of these, no matter which format you open, you should be able to copy and paste into your AcuGraph. There may be some formatting you have to redo. You remember that I had to redo some of the coloring when I pasted this one in here. And so it's going to depend on your operating system, your platform. Experiment around with it, but find the simplest, fastest way to get that copied over. And so there you go. Download them, enjoy them. And you've heard enough from me. Let's jump over to Kimberly. One second here. There we go. Kimberly, you all set?
I am.
Take it away. Impress us.
Have I taken over the screen? Probably not.
Yeah, I see you.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to say a couple of things about formatting it into your own document. There are a couple of questions over here, and let's see. Christina said, so AcuGraph is compatible with Mac. I found this out totally by accident. I just created a bunch of templates to see what I would want them to look like. And I just copied them and put them in, and they showed up well. I didn't have a Windows computer to test out the situation, but we just want you to realize that these are my templates, and how I've created them for my clinic. We've just given you a general idea of something to go by. Create them to make them perfect for you. This is how I talk to my patients, and these are the questions that I ask, but you will have specifics. And what I wanted to say is that there are a couple of extra templates in there that I am not fully responsible for. One of them was the pregnancy template. I actually talked with a colleague of mine that I went to college with, Deb Davies. She teaches continuing education courses in California for pregnancy. And so I said, Deb, she owns AcuGraph. And I said, what do you have in your templates? And what are important things for you to ask your pregnancy patient? So I asked her for information. And then Robin Green, I talked to regarding pregnancy, and we all know, or excuse me, pediatrics. And we all know that Robin is the queen of pediatrics. And so I said, Robin, what would you put in your template to make AcuGraph the most user-friendly for you? So her and I worked together back and forth and came up with some things. So what we've given you is definitely just something that you could build off of or recreate for yourself, but we wanted to make it easy so that when we were done with this webinar, you could immediately start using templates and feel like you were in control. So let's see. I am going to show you, we're going to talk about why multiple templates are important. So if you have, I loved when Adrian opened up a SOAP note and he put information, and then he took one more element and added it in. You can build your notes template, your notes paper in the process of your document, in the process of creating the note for your patient. You can build it however you need to for that patient. So if you have specific things that come up at different times, you can have little tidbits that you can add to, and that will be helpful. Let's see. I think one of the best ways that I'm going to show you of how I use notes in my clinic is to actually just go into a sample patient. So I've got a patient that I treated yesterday, and I kind of brought her information over. And let's see. Can you see my screen? You can see my AcuGraph? We're good. Okay. So this patient here, you can see that I graphed her yesterday. And she was actually a new patient yesterday. Let's see. And when I started coming in, when she came in and I sat down with this original blank note, what I do first, when the patient first comes in, I want to know about their chief complaint. I have their paperwork in my hands that they have filled out to come into my office, and that is in my hands. And then I sit down with them and I start talking to them about their chief complaint. And so I start with a blank note, and I add the chief complaint information to my template. If any of you are PCOM graduates, you'll know that this is sort of the following of the notes that I learned in PCOM. So when you had a chief complaint, we asked old carts questions, the onset, the location, the duration. And so I just type all that up and I put it there, and it gives me a place to start. I like to always make my chief complaint in red. So you'll notice I have the chief complaint written here. And if her chief complaint was neck pain, which then neck pain always comes up in red. That is helpful to me because every time I look at the scrolling portion of the patient file, my eyes immediately go to their chief complaint. I can see what their chief complaint was the last time they came in, and I can narrow in on that. Then I just start asking them questions, and as they're spouting off their story and they like to talk and talk and talk, I can jump around and I can I can answer their questions and get the information in and fill it up. I always add this here at the bottom, research. I have found that oftentimes the patient will give me more information that I need to research later before their next visit. And so I've found that on each of my templates, I like to put research at the bottom of the page and add that in. I'm going to show you real quick what I do with that. Let me copy something and bring it over real quick. Patient yesterday, I'm just going to put that. Within taking her full intake, I found out some information about her that wasn't specific to her chief complaint, and I wanted to be able to look into it later. So I added that she had had a gastric bypass, and she had been dizzy, and she wasn't coming to see me for dizziness. She was coming for the pain in her neck. So I wanted to look into that so I could talk to her about it the next time. So as I save that in the notes, well, before I save it, I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to save it. So in my notes, notice over here in the scrolling portion that it says research, but I'm going to teach you a little trick here. If you go to your home page and you go to your task reminders, and I've got custom tasks here. I can add a custom task, and I can put this patient's name, and I can put, yesterday was 1/14, and I can save this. And so now on my tasks that I have listed in the task and reminder section, I know that this is something that I need to work on. So I've got that information so that I can be prepared. And then when later in the day, at the end of the day or tomorrow, when I have actually found the research information for that patient, if I go back to that patient's file, I could click on it. I can add more notes. I can put the answer in, and I can save it. So next time this patient comes in, I will be able to remember that there was something I was going to research, and I'll be able to remember that there's an answer for it. So that's one of the ways that I use my notes. So back to the flow. So chief complaint, I've got their paperwork in my hand when they came into the clinic. I've got their chief complaint, and I've taken all this information. The next thing that I do after the chief complaint is I do a TCM intake, because I am a TCM practitioner, and that is part of the flow of my practice. So I have specific things that I ask when I do a TCM intake. And so again, I can add that note in, fill in the blanks, and save it. So you'll notice now over here, I've got the chief complaint information, and I have the TCM intake information. Within the TCM intake, after I've gotten all the information that I put in, it's time to go and graph them. And if I go and graph the patient, I can save the note, graph the patient, and when I come back after I graph them, I can open the note and add treatment information into it. And actually, I don't do that in, where do I do that? I would add that into my notes section, treatment to date, symptoms, and then I would add whatever treatment information. So I guess the point that I'm making is that you can go back and forth. Just because you've saved it and you've put it over into the patient file scrolling section, you can easily open it back up, you could add more information, and that is helpful. The other helpful tidbit, I'm gonna delete these that I just added in, because these were just samples of what I was showing you. And we're gonna actually go into yesterday's notes and see kind of the bigger picture of what I did. So here it is all filled out. Here was the original chief complaint note. And as she was talking to me and she was telling me about all the information of her chief complaint, I was typing it in and I was filling in the blanks and I was putting in all my information. One of the things that I find helpful in my notes to make my notes more effective, when your patient is giving all of their information, sometimes there's little tidbits that help you recognize the TCM pattern or that help you recognize the bigger picture of what's going on. So you'll notice there are certain things in red. She fell in October of 2013. She has a tendency to be lightheaded. So I like to utilize my notes in that there are certain things that I want in my big, huge note to pop out at me. So I go in with colors and I save that information. What else can I tell you about that? So you'll see that she has arthritis in her hands, she has dizziness. So these are all things that helped me to see a bigger picture, and next time I open the notes, I can see them quickly. Notice, and it helped me to come up. I could come back and forth. As I came up with a TCM pattern for her, I could add that in. So it looks like I'm jumping around, but I want you to realize that you can jump around in your AcuGraph. You can go to the graph, you can come back to the notes, you can jump around in all different places and save it, and then it is all there. And I find this to be a very helpful aspect. Let's go through a couple of the templates that might be helpful to you. Let's go with, I got this pediatric child coming in, and I can, she's a brand new patient, and I can go with a pediatric intake, and I can open it, and I can talk about her chief complaint, and maybe her chief complaint is diarrhea. She's got digestive issues and she's got diarrhea. I can ask, how long, what's been going on. Again, these were suggestions from Robin and the types of things that she asked for an initial pediatric intake. And I can save all this information. So I've got my information. I've begun to ask some TCM. I've done some evaluation. but I haven't graphed yet. So at some point I could go back and graph. I can save the notes, go back and graph, and now I've graphed, which I'm not going to graph right now, so you won't see a graph sitting up here. But, you know, at this point I can come up with my diagnosis. I can list my treatment. It's one of the ways. We get people who ask questions if you were doing a graph and you created a list of points that you treated in your treatment protocol. Well, some practitioners do it that way, and some people actually list the treatment points, or if they've used points that are not specific to AcuGraph's form of treatment, you can list them here. You can list their herbs and their follow-up, and again, their research. When this patient comes in the next time, I would have her graph, I would have all the information for her notes, and then the next time I could add the pediatric follow-up. You know, how were things from the last visit, and then go with evaluation for today. And so all of these notes can be saved. Let's see. A couple other helpful bits of information regarding notes. When a patient calls in and let's see. You've seen in AcuGraph that if you prescribe herbs, that would go into your notes section. Sometimes I prescribe herbs through a company called Crane Herb, where I give an herbal prescription and my patient picks up the prescription through email and it's sent to them directly. When I receive an email from the company saying that that person has picked up their herbs, I actually can copy that email information in and drop it into a note. So all of the correspondence that I have going on with my patient is in AcuGraph. So this is a sample of a patient when they picked up their formula. I copied the information and then it just told me, so that the next time I looked at their notes and I asked them, hey, did you take those herbs that I recommended? I do know that they picked them up and that it's in. Here's another little helpful tidbit. I like to always bold herbal formulas in green, so that as I'm scrolling through to try to see which herbal formula they were on last, I can see it quickly. So that's an herbal formula. By
the way, just wanted to point out, Kimberly, all of your use of color, I think is fabulous. The idea that you're using chief complaints red, herbs green, titles of notes blue. That's going to be the quickest, easiest way to pick stuff out. And full credit to you for pioneering that idea. Way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll thank Kimball for that one, for making it happen. So just keep in mind, if you have a patient who gives you a phone call and they have phone call questions, you can create the phone call correspondence and put it right into your notes section as well. Let's see, I had a couple other things. We talked about color. We talked about herbal formulas being green, phone conversations. If I could give you the very best advice possible is, let's go back to that sample patient. This sample patient comes in the next time. Now I've seen she came in for neck pain. I've got my TCM. I can quickly look at her information. And now she's sitting down with me on her very next visit. The best thing that I can do, the very first thing that I can do that is most helpful in the whole process, is to add a note for a follow-up intake. Decide what your follow-up intake is going to look like, or if you're a soap note kind of person, whatever it's going to be, create it and save it. That way, later in the day, if you are one who goes back a little bit later in the day and adds a few notes in, you already have a note created. It's already marked for that date. You can, you know, if I had to jump into the next patient and then come back to this patient, you know, 20 minutes later or during my lunch break and finish up taking the notes, I can do that because it's already been saved. And
I think that's probably pretty common that, you know, sometimes people finish up notes, like you said, at lunch or end of the day before they go home. They just review notes and make sure everything's complete. And you want to do it that day so that it's, you know, it's proximal in time. You don't want to have to go back a week later and try to remember what happened. So creating that note as a stub that you're going to complete is a reminder to get it completed that day. And I think it's probably pretty common, Kimberly. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, we get a lot of people who will say, who will call us and want to figure out how to finish their notes a little bit later. So we don't recommend, you know, taking days later to finish your notes, but if you've created the note for that date, then you can add information later in the day, and it's really, really helpful. Let's see. I think that I have shared what I wanted to. I did not share the pregnancy intake, but again, it's just like the pediatric. We've created a pregnancy intake, and again, this is from Deb Davies. She is the queen when it comes to pregnancy. I was the notes-taking girl in college and creating documents and pieces of paper, and she was into pregnancy. And it's kind of fun how we've both gone our two different directions. Now I'm the one who creates things for AcuGraph, and she's the one who teaches webinars for pregnancy-related people. So if you're treating pregnancy, this can be a good foundational point for you. Otherwise, can you think of anything specific that I've missed, Adrian?
Looks like you covered the list really well, Kimberly. I just put up the poll, a second poll. We're asking if you actually use the custom templates portion of AcuGraph currently, you know, before this webinar is what I mean. Hopefully for those that weren't using it, hopefully you're now going to. We want this to be helpful. We want this to be efficient. Meanwhile, we're going to open it up to Q&A. Let's hear what questions you've got, or what can we show you. We'll spend the next few minutes doing that, and then we'll wrap up. And I am pleased to report that we're actually running on time. You know, the first few webinars we did sometimes went long because we had so much, and I'm glad to see we're getting it all focused in on a single topic that we can cover pretty quickly. So that's great. I'm going to
answer Lenny's question, if that's okay. Lenny asks if you can add a note from the day before. You can go back at any particular date and time and add a note. Whatever date you put the note in, it will show as that date. And if you are writing a note from the day before, you'll just have to write in the notes. And I believe it's perfectly legal as long as you say, I am editing these notes from the day before, and here's the information that needs to go in. So just recognize that if you need the note to reflect the date of treatment, open up something to start so that later in the day you can change it. If you're going in the next day to create a note, always document that you are doing it the next day.
And I would add, we do get phone calls from people who say, I need to go back and I need to add a note, but I need it dated a week ago. There's a reason the software can't do that, and that is because that's falsifying records. And I know that stuff happens. I know, I understand the practicalities of practice, and sometimes you do have to go back and add information, but you need to note when you're doing that. If it's not the same day, if you're going back a week later and adding something, put it in there that you did it a week later. That keeps you out of trouble. You don't want to ever end up in a situation where it's discovered that you were actually misdating notes like that. That does not end well. So that's why the software does that, to answer the questions when people say, hey, why can't I backdate a note? That's why. But as Kimberly pointed out, if you start a note today, then it's in there. You can go back and edit it. You can, you know, later on in the day, add things, whatever you want to do. Start the stub, and then you've got the placeholder. Oops, sorry.
Destin asked earlier, she says, can I add a template within a template? So sleep within SOAP in the assessment portion. Absolutely. And I actually learned something from Robin Green. She was showing me what she does with AcuGraph. And she keeps several templates of little bits of dietary recommendations and specific information that she can just quickly click and add, click and add, click and add. So she has certain things that she recommends to people on a regular basis, and she adds them right into the notes. So I really like the idea of creating multiple sections of information that you want to add that you do on a regular basis. So this has been kind of fun to create this, this webinar. Do you want to answer Brian's question? Or
Oh, well, he just, yeah, Brian said that he's also a chiropractor. He's made custom templates for chiropractic stuff, and that way you can keep everything in one spot. Awesome. Great idea, Brian. And that was the point in adding this free-form template flow so that you could do things like that. So I'm glad to hear it. Destin has asked, what happens when you delete a note? If you remove a note instead of editing, is it traceable? That's a good question. I don't know that it actually keeps it hidden somewhere in the database and just doesn't show it. I think it actually removes it, but that's something I would actually have to ask our programmer under the hood what happens when you delete. But I believe that it actually deletes. So that's why you want to be very careful with that if you're deleting notes. And, oh, that was already answered Destin's question. Any other questions? Go ahead and put them up now. And by the way, I want to make sure that if you haven't downloaded those notes templates yet, you grab them from that offer over there on the side of your screen, click and download that so you can use those 7 that we created for you, and maybe they'll spur ideas for more that you can create.
So Lenny says that I have a template that is just labeled other to add miscellaneous notes. And that's great. What I would recommend, though, that you almost, if other comes up often, just make it part of your regular templates on a regular basis. I can see lots of additions in the future of taking little bits of templates, though, and continuing to add them all to one big note. This is really going to open up a lot of avenues, especially in micro.
Yeah, and always remember, you don't have to have a template to type stuff. If you also have other type information that's not templated, just type it in free form. You can do that at any time in your notes window. So you've got flexibility there. And Christina says, are the notes available online at the AcuGraph store? Because I cannot seem to open it to see. No, it's not in the store because it's not for sale. This is just kind of a freebie that we're giving out. So I'll tell you what, if you want to reach out to us on Facebook or something after the webinar, Christina, we'll be glad to get those emailed over to you or get them to you somehow. Destin says, how do you ensure that a second added template gets added within a current template? Let me just demo that really quick. Is that all right? Kimberly, should I just jump in and show that? All right, so what I'm going to do, let me share my screen again here and jump over here into AcuGraph. Okay, so if I'm typing a note, and let's say I have a soap note, and so I put that in, add to note, and I'm typing some subjective information where, pain in low back. That's a subjective complaint, let's say. And then for objective, I can describe my objective testing results and so on. But let's suppose I also want to include information about sleep for some reason. Then I would put my cursor in the note that I'm working on here where I want that sleep information inserted. And once my cursor is sitting there, I would click Add to Note. Oh, it added it at the bottom. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to add it where the cursor was. So when I click Add to Note, it drops it inside here. Now let me see if I can move it by copying and pasting. So I can take that snippet and just copy and paste it under objective, for example, or under whatever part of the note I want it in. So you can move stuff around in that way. You can drop other pieces from other templates in and move them around by copying and pasting. I think that shows it. Did everybody see that okay? Did that come through?
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Let's see, other questions. Pull that back up. Okay, I don't see any further questions coming up. So
my question is this.
What?
How many people who have not been using the notes are feeling more comfortable and wanting to jump in and use the notes now? Give us some feedback in the chat window.
Well, and we just did a poll on that too, and saw that that a number of folks are going to start, which is good.
I missed that poll.
Oh yeah, you were talking. Oh, I already reset it, so I can't put it up again. But yeah, there were a lot of folks said that they plan to start, and so hopefully this was really useful for people. And we're trying to focus on the nuts and bolts. Let's make your day a little more efficient, make your life a little easier, and get the value out of AcuGraph, because there's so much in there. And we find that, honestly, a third to a half of our users really just don't use a lot of the features that they're paying for because they don't understand what the features are and that they're in there. So anyhow, with that, I think we are going to bring it to a close. Kimberly, anything else from you?
I just want to say that I learned so much from the practitioners. So if you have fabulous notes templates or little ideas and tidbits that you have picked up along the way, please email and share. I love to get your information, and then I like to be able to share it with other practitioners. So I will be your go-between. So those of you who have ideas and want to share them with me, I'll share them with the whole group.
Great. And also, we do a training like this every month, and we've got a list of some great topics we're excited about, but we want to hear from you. What do you need help with? What do you need training on? That's why we're here, and we're glad to help out. So let us know, reach out. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, everybody. Thank you. Kimberly, you want to say goodbye?
I do, and then I just want to be sure all of you are following on the private AcuGraph Facebook forum, because that is a fantastic place to ask questions and get answers. And whenever there's something new, we tell you there first. And it's where you really get to know us personally, because we share lots of little fun tidbits on there.
That's where you get to know Kimberly personally, because she shares all kinds of stuff.
Kimberly tells about the whole office personally.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, she's the source of office gossip. All right, we better close before she starts spilling her guts.
She mentioned that she missed a previous webinar, and so if you are, how can you tell how to get them?
Yeah, in your AcuGraph portal, acugraph.com/ I believe it's /subscription. Let me just look it up, make sure I'm giving you the right info here. It is, acugraph.com/account. Go there, log into your account, and right there you have the links for all of your AcuGraph benefits, including the link to the webinars for those that have access to the webinars, and the past ones are archived there. So you can always go back there. Thanks for asking that. And Emma says, will we be able to see this again in replay? Yes, absolutely. You're going to want to replay probably those parts about how to copy and paste, maybe less so the part about me talking. So very good. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. And we will see you all next month.